Hey everyone, I have been excited to try some of the new builds that Season 3 of Diablo 4 brings. And I know that some of the new skills were buffed a lot. There were some new equipment for basically every single class that brings on these new builds, but I wanted to stay as far away from the meta as possible. And one of the builds that got me really excited was trying these new Paingorger gauntlets that essentially create their class agnostic. So they essentially create an opportunity for a basic attack build for any class. The only basic attack build that has been meta in the past is the Crone build for druids, and other than that, you don't really see any other basic attack builds that have been clearing essentially all content. So I was really excited to try these. And the class that I went with was Barbarian because, of course, we all know Barbarians, they can scale their damage really, really well. Um, so essentially, the mechanics behind Paingorger Gauntlet is that once you do an attack that is not a basic attack, it debuffs your target, and then based on that debuff, you deal anywhere from 100 to 200% increased damage just from your basic attack. It's kind of cool. And I've been trying it, and as you can see, my character is 95. I got these gauntlet around level 80, um, and I've been honestly smoking all of the content that the game has thrown at me. Vaults, the Uber bosses. Uh, Other than Duriel, I've been farming every single boss, pretty much beyond my level. So I want to get into the mechanics of this. So if if you can see my first attack, you'll notice that it shouldn't deal a lot of damage. It might overpower, but it was 70k, right? Now, what's going to happen is that you're not going to see any debuffs yet, but I'm going to steel grasp this training dummy, and you'll see a debuff here, right? This little cloud here. This indicates that my debuff is active, which is the mark that the gauntlets introduce. And what's going to happen is that that was a 70k overpower damage. That was really little. So now if I steel grasp properly, um, now you'll see that my numbers are definitely higher. Like they're 150. My crit was like 300k. Um, so what this what this does is that it um, actually does your basic attack and then a marked attack. So you're gonna see like two numbers here. So that was my one number. It was an overpowered crit, but this is a much higher number. So you'll see a bunch of attacks here that are uh, possible because of the mark. So it introduces um, it introduces a new possibility of this build to do like a lot of damage just using basic attacks. So as you can see here, the only meta skill that I may have here is the shout. I tried to stay away from HOTA. I tried to stay away from charge, which is absolutely meta. Every single player, barbarian player, has been playing this. Um, so the setup that I'm doing here is I open up with steel grasp, and then I start pounding the target. And honestly, I one-shot it. This is a boss dummy. Let me switch to normal training dummy, single target, and usually I just absolutely one-shot them. Um, so what ends up happening is that um, you might notice that here, you might be wondering, hey, how does the AoE work? So what happens is that if I introduce multiple training targets here, um, what you're able to do is if I steel grasp and it's wide enough to hit everything, um, it will mark everything with that little cloudy mark. So as you can see, three of my targets are marked, or four of my targets are marked. And what the Gauntlet does is that if you attack one of the marked target, it will echo that attack on other targets. And that's essentially how you wipe clean the entire map. So as long as you are marking your targets, so like, say I'm marking everything, it's going to attack and introduce that attack to everything. So that's how I'm basically clearing all of this. Um, so this is essentially the mechanic. So my rotation is I kind of either jump or leap into the targets. I steel grasp anyone that I haven't touched, and I just like start pounding one of them, and essentially it wipes the entire map, assuming that they're marked. So it's a pretty cool build. I've gotten it down to what I think is a reasonable, very fluid setup. I tried this. My first instinct was to try this with Rend, but I didn't find that to be as fluid. I thought that that debuff could stay longer than the default 3 seconds that this gauntlets introduce. Usually your Rend or any other bleeding is a default 5 seconds. But honestly, the idea is to not make the debuff last longer. The idea is to have it so that everything is marked quickly and then you finish them off quickly. Um, so what I wanted to do was I wanted to maybe run a level 60 vault. I'm 95, so level 60 monster levels, as you can see, is 114. So I'm just gonna try this one out, do the gameplay here, and really see how this feels out in the wild. Um, Single target damage as well. I've noticed it's really, really, really solid. Um, I'm able to take down bosses, unless it's a world boss right now, um, pretty quickly. So I'm in a vault. It's a level 60 vault. I should have targets that are 114. So I'm just gonna go and find like a little bit of a denser mob. So this is what I do. Essentially everything is dead as soon as I touch them. So um, here we go. And I haven't had to use my kick or anything else. I just mark them, and essentially they just pop, and they're all dead. This is an elite. Sometimes I have to pop my berserk. So my resistances are really low, and poison damage is really funky in Diablo 4. But as you can see, I just bunch things up, and they essentially just get deleted. There's no yeah, there's no competition. There's no problem here. Um, I wanted to talk about a few other things that this build brings. Essentially, um, seal. Yeah, exactly gone. Um, Wanted to talk about a few other things. So this build is basically powering up the crit, just scaling overpower damage. So at any given point, um, my skill should overpower. I'm just gonna grab enough of these charges because it's a melee class. I just run over all the traps. Um, I'm just not very good with traps. So just bring everything together, and I'm hoping either Butcher or Son of Malthus kind of pops up so I can actually demo single target on a really tough boss. Um, but really, I usually don't have any trouble running around with like these usual mobs. And what you might notice is that as I'm walking around without attacking, um, you'll see that I didn't attack and these targets are being marked. I have an aspect that is helping me with that. So, I may run out of charges for steel grasp. Um, what I'm doing here is there's an aspect that deals pulsating fire damage as long as I'm berserk. And the entire idea of this build to have as much berserk uptime as possible. So you want to stay berserk. Um, it just increases your damage an insane amount, as well as provide you with all the defenses that you need. So I'm going to go into a little bit more detail into Paragon points and skill points, but I kind of wanted to finish this vault. Don't need to be. Just oh cool. Again the level. Um, yeah, because I wanted to just showcase what the survivability and everything is like for the build itself, and you should be able to see the build in action in the last room where things get really hairy with um, like when the elites pile up a little bit. So let's see. I'm just gonna zoom past these mobs here to go to the final room. Basically just gonna give up any loot that I have here. I'll try to pick it up later, or maybe just um, get the unique items um, in my stash later. So what I try to do here is I try to take these totems out, just so I have room to move around. I'm not a ranged class, so I can't really close gaps or hit targets that easily. Okay, so things are starting to pile up. What I do is I just bring them closer to myself and just start popping them. Basically took like 2-3 hits and they're all down. I use kick when my fury is topped up, just so it can do its maximum damage. Here we go, 1.2 million crit right now. I think that was a kick. Just a boss left here, so let's see, 3.8 million kick, and we're basically done. Did not use any charge, leapt around very little. Um, yeah, basically finished. Um, that was super simple, and it was. I usually don't run Nightmare Balls this high level. And the reason for that is they're not very efficient in terms of popping potions and the time itself. And I want to pick up loot and I want to not stress out over it. It's just not efficient time-wise. But this was just for the showcase. Now, what I wanted to do was I wanted to kind of pop open the Paragon board. So I'm using a 4-board setup right now. I'll pop into the 5th board. This is a temporary setup. I was just trying a few things. I might switch some boards around, but essentially, aside from the basic board, I have the Carnage, which gives me a lot of attack speed, Blood Rage, which increases my damage while berserking. So the important part is you may or may not be bleeding the enemy, which is the first sentence here. It says bleeding enemy gives you a chance to berserk. That doesn't really matter. We're getting berserk other ways, and I can get into that. But the most important part is your damage is increased by 25%, which is a multiplier of your damage while berserking bonus. So damage while berserking, it needs to be on every stat for you. And my current bonus is 73x. So 73% multiplier is what I am getting while I'm berserking. And as you can see here, my weapon, damage while berserking, damage while berserking, damage while berserking, and my rings also have damage while berserking. Also my slashing weapon. So absolutely mandatory to pile up damage while berserking. You shouldn't have any weapons without it. And if I go back to my Paragon board again, yeah, this is the most important Paragon board for any berserk based build. Other than that, the next one I'm running is Bonebreaker. This is just to enable my overpower attacks. And then the most important note here would just be giving me some defenses, a little bit of overpower. I'm making sure I hit bonuses aside from the regular notes, bonuses for damage while berserking. Here, I think I have 4 of them here. So yeah, so essentially this is the board. What I'm gonna do in this video here is I'm also gonna link my D4 builds link for this build. So if you're able to see that as well, you should be able to see what stats I prefer, what stats I've been testing, not only on weapon but also defensively on every armor. And this build has it essentially is basically single click with a little bit of utility available, and it's definitely not doing as much damage as a HOTA barb, um, or a charge barb even, um, but it provides a lot of utility, and I'm sure this will do really well when gauntlets come around. I'm gonna make sure that I try that, give that a try. I don't think gauntlets you need to do billions of damage, um, and because of that, I think it's really fast. The attack itself, with HOTA, you have to do lunging strike and then HOTA, um, or charge and make sure that your cooldown reduction is like through the roof, because you want your charge to be available. Otherwise, it's 9 to 4 seconds. But here, I have everything available. I'm not relying on Fury. I'm not relying on anything. And lunging strike is essentially my main damage. And yeah, I think so. At the moment, as you can see, my attack power, I don't have any potions on. I wanted to do this without any potions. My attack power currently is sitting at 16k, which is decent. I know that around level 100 barbs and druids who are popping off their damage are sitting around like 25 to 30k. Um, if you're watching Rob's Barb, who's just absolutely insane with um, all of the Uber uniques available, he sits around 50k. I don't even think you need that much damage to clear any content, but that's just really cool to see. Anyway, my armor is definitely low, and that's why I am running um, disobedience here. So for disobedience, um, it should give me 13 or just over 13 14k damage. um, what you want to be looking at is, I think the magic number is 13.2k, to avoid getting overwhelmed by nightmare no, dungeon level 100 mobs. um, so disobedience should be able to give me that, um, but still I'll try to pump this up as well. And I'll go into my gear in a bit. And of course, life is sitting at just over 20k. Um, Usually, I know barbs got a buff to their health, so honestly, level 100 barbs are mostly sitting at, with okay gear, probably at 30, 40k. So that's what I'm gonna aim to do. If your build is overpower based, life is essentially damage scaling, because overpower damage is based on your fortifying life. So essentially my hit points, effective hit points are 40, just like 42k. Um, so yeah, that's essentially the build. In terms of uniques, the only unique that you absolutely need for this build is Paingorgers, and you can farm this um, from the Ice Beast. Um, as you can see, this is a level 830 unique. Um, and I'm not even getting the full 200% bonus as well. My rolls are pretty low. They could be a lot better. And most of my gear, the only 925 weapons I have at this point are my slashing weapons, which is not exactly right. The only thing that I was prioritizing was damage while berserking. These should ideally be maces to enable to actually boost my overpower damage, which is sitting at 1266. Not great. Usually HOTA barbs, they sit at somewhere between 2500 to 3000% increased overpower damage. This percentage will never move, but you're guaranteeing overpower damage from elsewhere, like in your Paragon board, glyphs, etc., etc. Um, my crit damage is sitting. I think it's in a decent spot. Combining that with vulnerable targets, I think it's sitting somewhere around 400 400%. I could use a lot more crit chance here. Um, so yeah, those are the things that I'm gonna work on in my end game build as soon as I hit level 100. Farming for things that give me essentially more armor, more crit, a lot more overpower. I need to fix my resistances. Like as you can see, I was able to cruise through this nightmare vault level 60, based on pretty crappy resistances. Um, so yeah, those are some of the things that I'm looking to improve. Again, this build is absolutely not at its best. At its best, I know it could compete with some of the best meta builds that are out there for not just for Barbarian but other classes as well. Um, I'm using for my helm. I'm using the Joris, um, the double berserking helm. So it's giving me a lot of damage, and it also comes with close to 20% damage while berserking, which is my magic stack that I'm looking for in every single um, um, weapon and ring for myself. Um, what ideally what I would want is once all my damage is um, skilled without this helm, I would like something here that has life, armor, and a lot of like damage reductions. My chest, um, again, very low level. It has total armor, resistance, and max life. Total armor and max life are your golden stats. What you're looking for essentially is some kind of damage reduction while fortified, and damage reduction, just general damage reduction. Again, our build enabling uniques for the gloves, and for my pants, I'm using total armor, max life, damage reduction from close, damage reduction while fortified. This is pretty much GG stats that you want um, in your pants, pretty much. Um, just the rolls are terrible, and it's not a 925. But this is essentially what you want on your pants as well. I'm using triple resist boots, which are almost mandatory for barbarians. They have a tough time hitting the resist cap. And of course, the other stat you want is movement speed. Your movement speed at max, I think it's 26.2%. So that's what you should be hitting. Your bludgeon weapon, again, this is not the greatest stats right now. All of the weapons should be aiming for all stats, strength, overpower damage, and damage while berserking. Those are the four basically GG stats. And as a side note, if you're looking to make a lot of gold and you find anything with those four stats, um, they will sell for a crap ton of money. Um, so this is here again. I would like overpower damage here, but instead I have basic skill damage. All the other three skills are something that I'm looking for. Um, Strength, overpower, damage to stunned is something that you don't really want. So I'd probably like all stats instead of damage to stun. Damage while berserking is great. And then here I have damage to bleeding, which is not really ideal. Basic skill damage, not really ideal, but that's something that I was hitting. Not really I was not really lucky with the slot machine that is the enchanting in Diablo 4. For your rings, you essentially want crit chance, damage while berserking, max life, and I'm still trying to see what the best stat would be. Um, I don't think we can get um, overpowered damage here, um, but I think I've been focusing on critical strike damage. But max life, damage while berserking, absolutely crucial. Critical strike chance, absolutely crucial to have that on both of your rings. My necklace, this isn't really the best. Um, and again, I would like to have instead of crowd control duration, movement speed here. Total armor, max roll, absolutely perfect roll. This is great. Damage reduction while fortified, also amazing stat to have if you're using a fortify based or power based build. And then one rank to counter offensive. I would like that to be two. And counter offensive is the node here that gives you, I believe it's 4x per rank. So 4% multiplier if you have your fortify above 50% of your max life. Usually you will find that you don't fall beyond 50%. So this is an absolute must have. The other thing you can also go for is Wallop, which is also really great. It's a really good multiplier. It's actually a 5% per rank multiplier, so it's probably better than having counteroffensive, but I just haven't been able to find it. You want a double Wallop necklace, like a +2, and then once you upgrade it to 5, you'll get a third, so this should be 6 out of 3, ideally for this build. And the reason why you want it on bludgeoning weapon is your lunging strike. You want to actually prioritize using lunging weapons, or sorry, bludgeoning weapons, because the three passives here, the two-hander, overpower when you're using two-hander, and then wallop, which is the bludgeoning damage to vulnerable enemies. This is actually going to give you a ton of damage. Um, so yeah, that's pretty much it for the gear. What I'm kind of looking into right now are the aspects. So just want to go over the aspects here one more time. So because this is a basic attack build, you want to run aspect of might, which is a basic skill grant you 20% damage reduction. Massive for this build. It if you're auto attacking, even if it's not this build, this is an absolute must have for this build in terms of granting you damage reduction. The other one that's also important is the Edge Master, which where's Edge Master? Yeah, this one. Completely missed it. So Edge Masters, what it does is it gives you a multiplier based on your primary resource. So if it's full, you gain up to 40% multiplier. And guess what? This is a basic attack build that doesn't use any fury. So every time you hit your basic lunging strike, um, you want to be at a full. You'll always be at full fury, and this will deal 40x damage. So this is the most important in terms of dealing damage here. Some of the other ones that are better for quality of life are um, the burning rage, the aspect of burning rage, which is while I'm berserking, I'm pulsating fire damage. So as you can see here, it says any non-basic um, damaging enemies with non-basic skill. So this counts as a non-basic skill. So while you're pulsating fire damage, it just tags them with this mark, with this debuff. So your auto attacks, as soon as you're surrounded by enemies, you just tap them. They're marked using this aspect, and it's great. Like it just it essentially just like tags them without you having to do any lunging strike or any other cooldown. It's great. The other skill that I'm also using is while berserking, I inflict bleeding damage, and that's just to scale bleeding. And instead of rend, which does its own 5-second debuff for bleeding, this also applies a 5-second debuff for me. So instead of default 3-second mark, I have a 5-second mark on targets in case they were to survive 5 seconds, which is unlikely. Um, but it's good for like if you're fighting 2 or 3 elites, right? Because if you can tap other targets, and it will still deal targets to your other targets as long as they're marked. So this is also something that is totally not mandatory. Bleeding one, I think fire one is probably more priority than the bleeding one. But this is also something I'm using. Other than that, I'm just using disobedience for some for piling on some armor. Um, I might look into chieftain. I think this was just a ring that came with it, so I just ended up using it. Same thing with encroaching wrath. I don't think I need this because my weapon mastery skill, the only thing is steel grasp. Um, I don't. This is not supposed to be in my build. I'm just using it because I found the ring. And what I'm gonna do here is I'm on my necklace. I'm most likely going to put What is the, oh yeah, rapid offensive aspect, which just grants me more attack speed if I'm doing basic attack damage. Um, the other one that is also very crucial is sometimes there are affixes or just stubborn mobs, maybe the suppressor mobs that are just like not dying with two or three taps, and you just absolutely want to kill them. Um, this aspect, along with kick, will take care of them. So as soon as you kick an enemy, they just, if they're killed within 2 seconds, they explode for more AOE. So again, this is also nice to have along with everything else. Um, so that's another thing that I'm using. In terms of my skill tree, expertise. Of course, I'm using the 200 axe, which grants me damage to vulnerable targets. In terms of skills, I tried working on this build using Frenzy, which is my all-time favorite skill. Um, but I just wasn't able to make it work. And the reason for that is anything else other than lunging strike requires you to have specific weapons. So, for example, bash requires you a bludgeoning weapon. Frenzy requires dual wielding, and this requires a slashing weapon. There's no requirement for lunging strike. You can use any kind of weapon. What this means is, um, let's say I'm using a bludgeoning weapon, and by the way, this deals the most damage compared to Bash, which is also a bludgeoning weapon. Um, I can scale this really, really high. Now, for dual wielding and single targeting, I can't use these because they're not too. For dual wielding, I can't use obviously two-handers, so all these will not apply. I'll have to use this attack speed one, and I'm already getting a lot of attack speed up from other sources. So that is my reasoning for going with lunging strike for the basic attack build. And I'm going with combat lunging strike, which is, if I have high enough crit, this is why I want to stack up crit. One of the reasons, it'll give me berserking. And then from there, none of these kind of apply. Like, I don't want any passive, any core skills. I'm going straight to my shout. I really tried hard to stay away from shouts and any meta core skill. I didn't want to use upheaval. I didn't want to use whirlwind and HOTA, or any other shout. The only thing that I'm using this for is to grant me unstoppable, and it's very difficult to get that. Um, and eventually, when I have enough armor, enough all the defenses, I do want to run Tibbles, which, because I have Unstoppable from Rallying Cry as well as my Wrath of the Berserker, Tibbles will grant me a lot of freaking damage. So that's another way to scale damage. So anyway, right now I'm using this shout. Um, the only Fury dump in my skill tree is kick, which is absolutely amazing. It's also one of my favorite skills. Um, and I'm using power kick, which consumes all of my fury and deals up to 7,000 damage per 10 fury. Um, Essentially, I have, just want to see what's mad fury I have. I have 115, so it's 7,000 times um, yeah, so it'll be like times 10, 10 point like 11. So it's crazy amount of damage. Plus, what I'm also doing is I have, because I'm using Edge Masters, there's also a 40x multiplier there as well. So, the more fury you have, the better. And what you don't want to do is you don't want to open your rotation with a kick because you will have zero fury. So what you want to do is you want to open up with steel grasp, which is the only skill that I found as a good opener and a tagger for my debuff from the Paingorger gauntlets. I tried Rupture, it was too slow, because what Rupture does is actually thrusts your weapon, which needs to be a slashing weapon, um, and then it pulls it out, and then it takes some time, even if you have a lot of attack speed, it takes some time to pop that damage. Um, so I didn't really find that very, very effective. So that's why I'm going with Steel Grass. And there's another reason, and I can get into that in a bit. Um, but yeah, Steel Grass my opener, and then Lunging Strike will just take care of everything. For another mobility, I'm using Leap, which is also great as a thing that I need to move around. And oh man, I wanted to highlight a bug. Maybe I'll create a new video for it. But there's a bug where you can actually cross walls um, using leap. So maybe I'll wait for a cooldown. But leap is a good movement skill. Like it lets you move around a lot. Um, but yeah, like for some reason I'm able to go through walls. Like for example here. I should not be able to do that. But anyway, it's not in the build because it's an exploit. It's in the build because it's a great movement skill. And of course, I don't want to use an exploit um, to gain any advantage. I'm just putting it out there because this is possible. It shouldn't be. Maybe I'll create another video and maybe tag some of the devs. But anyway, uh, lunging strike. Um, Lunging strike as a basic attack, and then everything else is just complementary to the build. And some of the more important passives that I have here are I just want to take all of these. This is being granted by one of my gear, and I want to double check what gear is granting me this. Yeah, I think it's my Jorith that's granting me aggressive resistance, which grants you a lot of damage reduction um, while you are berserking. And you will be berserking all the time in this build. When you hit with a brawling skill, at least one enemy, you gain berserking for 3 seconds. Massive, and we have two of them, two brawling skills. So if for some reason we don't have berserking, these two, um, thanks to battle fervor passive, it will hit for it'll hit you. It'll get you berserking, no problem. And then while berserking, your fury generation is increased. This is not exactly a requirement. It's again a nice to have, because while you're berserking, and if you're running around or just trying to avoid like big mobs or something, and your lunging strike is just taking them down but not doing that well, you generate fury and you just kick them. You just kick the shit out of them. They bang against the wall and they just essentially die. So yeah, this is just to help gain more fury, and the more fury we have, the more attack we do because of Edge Master, or sorry, the damage we do. Um, Here we have no mercy. We have increased critical chance to gain critical strike um, chance against any immobilized, stunned, or slowed enemies. I have this because we're stunning them. Um, uh, Basically, we're stunning them against the wall here. Um, uh, and this also makes it vulnerable, so this is another source of vulnerable for you. um, Another way to slow things is what we can do is we can spend a, um, 1 point here. So if the target is bleeding, they're slowed, and if you're slowed, you have a guaranteed no mercy critical strike chance against them. So remember, I have this aspect that if I'm berserking, some of my damage is converted, or sorry, not converted, applied as bleeding. That passive here is essentially making them slow, and it's giving me more critical strike chance against them. So that's the reason for this passive here. Um, there are other ways to um, make your enemies bleed um, through your Paragon points, but I'll go through those as well. And then pit fighters, you just deal more damage to close enemies and distant damage reduction. Here, steel grasp. This is the starter. Um, I have been farming the ice beast for Ancient's Oath, which is a unique that is basically granting damage to Steelgrass. And what it does is it grants a lot of ranks to Steelgrass, so by default it'll hit harder. Um, But if it doesn't kill the target, what it does, it makes your it makes you deal more damage after you use this and hit an enemy. So I've been trying to farm that. That's also going to be another thing that I use to scale my build further at level 100 or beyond that. So anyway, that's my skill at the moment. I don't have that ask, but I would love to get that as well. So again, this is the starter. It just pulls enemies to you, tags them for your gauntlets to do its magic. Um, this is another source of vulnerable for you, so this is a no-brainer. And then, if you're damaging an enemy using this, you again, this is your opener. This is your source for berserking. So you're honestly um, almost always berserking. Thick skin. The Each time you take damage, you gain fortify. I don't want to max this out. This is just an entry for counteroffensive, which is huge, as I was saying. For being fortified for 50% of my max life deals like more damage, and then you can scale that. These three are like we spoke about. If you're using bludgeoning weapons, which you should be, wallop is great to get that multiplier from here. We have more overpower damage with brute force, and then heavy-handed, I deal more critical strike damage, so 15x. Um, the ultimate that I'm using is Wrath of the Berserker. Again, no-brainer here for a Berserker build. Um, this is also another source of Unstoppable, which you absolutely want in your build, especially at higher levels. You don't want to be stun locked, so this is one source for you, and this is another source of Unstoppable. And then finally for the um, key passive, um, again, this is also a no-brainer. And the reason for that is, of course, this grants you more damage during berserking. Um, but I think this has been buffed from um, a very small amount. I think it was 30% or maybe 60%. I can't remember. But in season 3, this has been buffed to 100x. Which is a huge multiplier. So if we're not using this, we're saying goodbye to a lot of damage. So again, um, that's what we're doing. And then I have some imposing presence, which gives me some max life. And if if it's not granting me more defenses, it's helping me deal more damage because overpower, right? Paragon boards, again, this is all going to be included in my build. The first glyph I'm going for is Ire, which is dealing more damage while berserking, no brainer. Um, and then the next one is Exploit, again, no brainer. You deal more damage to vulnerable targets and you continue to make them vulnerable if for some reason none of your other sources are making them vulnerable. And again, I can definitely um, min max this a little bit more. Um, but yeah, at the moment, I think this is what I'm working with. Damage to bleeding enemies. So here I might switch this away to something else because this is only a 35% additive damage. I have 5% critical strike chance against bleeding enemies. This is, I'm sure I can do better, but this is what I'm using right now. Um, and one of the aspects is granting me bleeding, so that's great. Um, and then the final glyph I have is just pumping up my overpower damage, which is the dominate glyph. So those are the four that I have. The next board that I'm gonna be going for here is um, most likely gonna be Decimator. Um, I think that's what I have in my planner currently. But if um, if I think of something else, maybe I'll update the build. But at the moment, this is what I'm thinking of. Going with Decimator, and just making sure that this is the thing that I'm able to hit. So maybe I'll rotate it this way. Yeah. So this is what I'm probably gonna hit with the quickest path. Um, and then I'll see what else is available to me. I don't think I'll be able to get to this glyph with my points, even if I use um, even if I do some clever use of game mechanics to get to this. Um, but yeah, so this is my Paragon board essentially. Um, yeah, so basically, without going into too much detail, we saw the gameplay for a level 60 Nightmare Vault. Um, and we talked about what the build looks like. I know there is a way to improve this. There are ways to improve this. So again, tables is I already have a couple of them. I think I have some of the max rolls ones. I just want to not lose um, the health that I have and some armor that I have here with a lot of damage reduction. So I don't want to lose that. Um, and then the other one would be Ancient's Oath. That's the axe that I'm hoping to get as soon as that drops, because as soon as I use Steel Grats, it will give me a huge multiplier for damage as well. I'm not using any of the unique rings because they don't really make sense for this build. Um, and there's a new unique ring that was introduced this season that if you use any of your brawler skills, it rends your target. Um, Again, it doesn't really make sense because I'm just having them bleed with this aspect. Um, Maybe I'll consider it if they have good stats. I don't think they do by default. It doesn't really make sense for that build. Um, so yeah, this is the build that I have. I'm pretty excited to be staying away from the meta. I do like staying away from meta builds. They're just if some of the builds that even if they don't work, they're just that much fun to play around with and just solve the puzzle of maintaining a lot of damage while maintaining um, your defenses as well. So let me know what you guys think. I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have in the comments. I'm new to build creation and content creation, so what I'm gonna try to do is if there is an ask for me to stream some of um, my gameplay, I'm happy to do that as well. But there's no plans for it, so I'm happy to answer any questions about the build um, in the comment section below. But yeah, check out the D4 build link in the video here in the description. And I'm happy to answer any more questions. I can also include my battle tag, so feel free to add me and we can power up through um, any of this content. And I'm happy to answer questions not only for the build that I'm posting about here, but any other build as well. Thank you so much for watching, and happy farming.